B1 Network, Brother Moses, cultural news and reviews. I will have one heck of a time breaking down this conversation. $4.8 trillion budget does not include reparations. Did I miss the not? Let me see if I put it right there. Budget does. Ooh, I could leave it at does include and just leave a little plot twist on there, but what? 4.8 trillion budget does not include Black reparations. What happened? That's what it ought to say. So let me change that. And before I get into the storyline, let's first kick off the screen share for you all there. And Balao, one of the websites that I'll be having some information from a little bit later. So I do want that to be up and available. But as of right now, the second thing that I also need to do is, as always, let's see if this reloaded. There we go. Run my beautiful music. I'm wondering, can you hear that? Does that come out clear? Is the music too loud, too soft? Do you think it'll be disruptive if I kept the music in the background as I give you this content? I think I'm gonna turn it up just a smidgen because I like the energy. It is Friday. And you don't got to be here. So if you're going to be here, we might as well have a party. Let's do it. And then let me also add this so people know exactly what I'm talking about across the bottom. Stay with me, B1 Brother Moses, and we do got some great content for you. First story, though, as you see from the thumbnail, I was at work. And a coworker brought this story to my attention today from the Black Wall Street Times. That story first started off with, hey, didn't you attend Morehouse College? And so, of course, I confirmed I did. I am an alumna. Morehouse College polo team certified by U.S. Polo Association, and they are asking for comments. It's been a total of 141,000 shares of this story. And it is something to which I'm absolutely proud about. Yeah. I'm proud for a number of reasons. As you see, it was published there on the 10th. But a number of reasons, polo being one of those very affluent or top games. Let me see. Salute. And so Morehouse College Polo Club received that letter from the Polo Association that says we would like to officially welcome Morehouse College to the family. Goes in and gives a little bit more information about it there. I'll leave it on the screen just for a second. But even though she brought me that, I kind of knew it. I saw the ad. You know, I follow, they send notifications to alumni. So for me, I was like, thank you for sharing. But that is a bit of a distraction because what I am more focused on is something that is not getting as many shares and comments, not getting as much media coverage. There is some media coverage out there that's available, but it's kind of being swept under the rug. That is this proposed $4.8 trillion budget for fiscal year 2020, one that does not include Black reparations. So you got to ask the question, what happened? What happened? What happened with that momentum? So I'm gonna give a little bit of analysis and commentary on that. It is one of the biggest social issues of our time. And so it is of relevance to us. So cultural news with that hip hop twist. This beat right here is a good one. So I'm gonna let it rock one more time as I continue to move towards the content. Momentum was my first bullet note. And momentum is a thing that is cultivated through media. We have our YouTube platforms that are working in our spaces, delivering to the audiences that we have attracted. And that is, despite the odds of Google Analytics, notifications, the back end work, the skill set needed, the investment of time and energy to make those spaces grow and to make those messages, that content, that media, make it consumable. So we work and we got to continue to build this thing up. $4.8 trillion. Now, Brother Moses can tell you about different sources and reports and different energies that was pushed behind that conversation for Black reparations. We can tell you how it tried to approach that stage of the politicians running for political office. We can tell you about the bill that was repositioned in the years and that bill and its ramifications and what was said. We can tell you about the event that was held, the congressional hearing, and the people who were asked to come and represent, the Candace Owens and the young Black conservatives. And we can even tell you that in social media space, there are many young Black conservatives who are starting, probably about a handful I can name myself, who have made their efforts to engage in that political process. And to what end? To what end? What happened? 2 days ago, USA Today published Social Security. Here's what Trump's proposed budget could mean for your benefits. So Social Security, your benefits. I'm thinking, yeah, when I looked at my taxes, it's getting towards tax season. I'm looking at my taxes and I'm like, damn, this Social Security is high. Why are they taking so much of my labor, my hours, my income? And I can't do nothing about it. I have no say so in it. So what could it mean for my benefits? Well, the thing that I would look for in that story is whether or not they was going to take less. But we know that that's a no. It's not in the budget for them to take less from the working class or from your income. So damn, if we won't get that reprieve there, we can look forward to, another, 30% of your labor hours being taken and given to somebody else. That income is not going into your pocket. So I'm like, what else? What else about this budget should I know? I'm looking for other headlines, right? I'm continuing my research since I can't dive into that report from the USA Today and get what I need, right? And so I'm continuing my research. My Google search. And I find that The Hill published their op-ed piece from Representative Nita M. Lowey. Lowey? What kind of fucking last name is that? But Nita, she's a Democrat from New York. It only received 66 shares. Morehouse polo team, 141,000 in the same amount of time. So what are we focused on here? Their title, at the time of my review here, there were 66 shares. And let me say this, I did find their approach to spreading this message about the budget to be more relevant to where I am at in life right now, as a Black husband, as a Black father, and even as a millennial. Their title, Trump declares war on Americans with new budget request. It caught my attention because I am also a veteran. Trump declares war on Americans with a new budget request. Yeah, that's gonna trigger, something about it. My Trump trigger. Trump declares war on hardworking Americans, with a new budget request. Of course, that caught my attention as a Black husband, as a father, as a millennial, because I am hardworking, but as a veteran, because they use that triggering word in their war. Other reasons, right? Their title, Trump declares war on hardworking Americans with new budget requests. It caught my attention because I am also a veteran concerned with my battle buddies' well-being, as well as the hardworking American. The Root wrote the piece, and One of the lines I want to just bring forward and give a little bit of more deep dive on. Lowy, however you say her last name. What kind of damn last name is that? Anyway, the Democrat from New York says, these higher discretionary spending levels made it possible for Congress to responsibly fund the federal government and provide greater investments in the needs and priorities of American families and communities. That's low. Source was The Hill, Congress blog, economy and budget. See, some of those things, somebody had wrote a piece that said it's the economy, stupid, but yet they got about 6,000 shares, maybe something, 66, not even 1,000, just 66 shares. This is The Hill, and they got 66 shares. So what happened? Let me make sure we're still at a good spot with the music. Oh yeah, I own this one as well, or at least the right for this one, the licensing, but let me run that back. I do have those ones. Yep. At this point, I'm ready to get into the conversation. $4.8 trillion fiscal year 2020 budget that does not include reparations at all. What happened? I would focus on just that one talking point from the Democrat from New York that says investments in the needs and priorities of American families and communities. That's where I would start. You could also start on the numbers. We could talk budgets because they deem it unreasonable to even include inside that budget. I said 2.2 trillion. Others try to scale it back a little bit. They say, well, reparations, let's do it over a longer period of time. Cut the check to, what is it? What is that? 4.8 trillion. To round it up to an even 5 trillion would be a $200 billion reparations claim. Just to start, I think that's Elizabeth Warren numbers, something right there. $200 billion fiscal year 2020, but it did not make the budget. So what happened to that first bullet note? Momentum. Second bullet note, who dropped the ball? See, if you make it on the Breakfast Club, you can't smile. Who dropped the ball? As we know, many of those initiatives aforementioned, Congressional Black Caucus, National Association for the Advancement of People of Color, as somebody wanted to remind me of, that's how they kind of define their vision now, is people of color rather than the advancement of colored people. Go figure, semantics. HR 40, the subcommittee hearings, the representation by Candace Owens and her perspective. Where is the data on white national extremist groups or terrorism or any related acts, race-related or hate crimes committed since 1996? That was a bit of her position there. Where is the data? Prove it, basically. The study of and development of. The study and development of HR 40. And so what? So what we have here, the presidential candidates, Elizabeth Warren again, and there, let's get it into the debate and let's at least talk about it. The interviews that were conducted, all of that momentum now into, if all of y'all were championing this cause, what happened? I bring it up in my debates. Some of those debates get about 2,000 views, but not as many shares as this one. This one at least got 66 shares. But when we hold our debates using the platforms that we have access to and the voice that we have as contributing authors in this sector of media that we identify as Black YouTube, when we present information, we'll get views, but how many shares? They got 66. There's a story, though, that crosses lines, I guess, that my coworker brought to my attention, got 141,000 shares. What happened and who dropped the ball on spreading this message? A round number, $5 trillion would be an inclusion of $200 billion. I don't think that that's unreasonable at all. I don't think it's unreasonable at all. I think, in fact, it is one of the most reasonable comments that anyone could make in this space right now. And while they can do stories from the USA Today about Social Security, where is our story about that $200 billion? That's a minimum. And just to even round up the budget, which right now does not include anything in regards to Black reparations. What would $200 billion even mean as a percentage of the gross national product that we will create and deliver on in 2020? What is that even a percentage? What is that even a percentage of the allocation of the taxes that they will collect and redistribute to the private companies and the public companies and the people who have businesses, the households? What is that as a percentage of the gross national product and what they will be accountable for managing? What is it? Is it even a significant scratch in the bucket to say $200 billion? Is it even significant to say right now? See, if you get to the Breakfast Club, you can't smile, especially not missing that damn front tooth. If you make it to the Breakfast Club and the thing that you have to say is anything other than cut the check, what do you feel about that? Has to be written into it. It has to be written into it. It has to be written into the budget. And we can do our part here as Black media. When they come, when the hashtag ADOS and their chapter presidents and their representatives and local, I don't know if it's an organized movement yet, but it seems like they are organizing with the components that are similar to how we are structured under the guise of white supremacy. They have a governing structure where there's a hierarchy. They have what they call local chapters, ADOS Sacramento, for example, or ADOS Chicago, for example. And in those chapters, they have self-proclaimed presidents. They have meeting spaces, a meeting house. They have communications channels where they're using their networks, their subscriber-based model. They are using their email-based model. They are using what they have, their phones, and they are making contact with one to the other to meet up at a place and to discuss something. And those discussions can often veer into celebrity worship. But bring it back. That celebrity worship is the entertainment piece. That is the sugar that is needed with the medication. That is the sweetener. But don't lose focus and don't be distracted. What is the point of it all? If you can't even have a conversation about $200 billion. Black reparations is the most critical and clear, to the point, concise statement to make in mixed spaces. It is the most effective form of I want my shit back, B. Write it in the budget. Fiscal year 2020, what is $200 billion where it is rounding up? It is inclusion. It is that missing link in what you determine to be investment in the needs and priorities of American families and communities. Don't forget about us. We here. We are still right here. Ain't nobody waiting. We are working. We fit all the descriptors that had been put into place. We know in that budget some of the things that it will include. Let me do that just so they don't think I'm just having a long rant about nothing. Let me give them the information they want, which is the white perspective and what they want to see inside of it. So let's look at to the numbers. What's actually there? Is there a slide or a presentation or something that I might want to share to dive into what actually made it into the fucking budget, the figures and the data? Do I have to become a member to do so, or can I just access that information? Can we look at the information and the metrics? Who will actually benefit? And why is my name not in that beneficiary? I saw the report. I saw the Social Security and those benefits. I read that report. It looks like they're going to continue to hit me for my labor. But where is my benefit in this investment? So they call it. And you know, Brother Moses, I say our representation is, and putting their foot to the fire, NAACP, Congressional Black Caucus, Black Chamber of Commerce. What happened? Who dropped the ball? When it matters is my third bullet point. Quick takeaway here. You have the momentum. Who dropped the ball? I've told you about the people who was doing everything they could. You know, they made it to the public debate stage for Democratic presidential candidates, the highest office in America and the highest influential office in the world. And they were talking about Black reparations. And somehow, despite it making it to that stage, it did not make it into fiscal year 2020 budget. And so we have a responsibility and accountability to say, where is our intense and emotional reaction to this denial of our own economic civil rights in a capitalist nation? Why are you, the nigga, being deprived of your political power, your economic mobility? Why are you the one who didn't get anything out of their budget? Not your schools, public education. Break down that budget and see how they will continue to defund your schools or the places that you would want your kids to attend. See how much is in there for the private education. He says choice, but where is school choice? The voucher program that would allow Black parents who want to send their sons to attend the Ziyex Institute, $4,000, that voucher. If my child is sitting in a public school, the federal government has monies allocated to fund those federal schools. If I believe that that might not be in the best interest for my gifted and talented son and daughter, and that there is a public education curriculum that dives deeper into STEM, and that is a better fit for my household, why is that school, that Ziyex Institute, not going to receive the benefit of that same funding? Why? Because we aren't being written in to these fiscal year budgets. We're being excluded. And we have brothers who can talk about celebrity stronger than they can talk about budgets. And I don't knock them. It's sugar. But they got to get this work. Someone in the chat here just wants to know, do I still believe I am getting reparations out here? LOL. Appreciate the question and the contribution to the topic. Do I believe? That is one hell of a question to ask. Do I believe that we'll get it? He said, do you believe you're getting it? So he personalized it. Will Brother Moses get reparations? That's what I'm fighting for. That's why I use my space, is because I know every group has a responsibility in a democratic governing nation or a democratically governed nation. Every group has the responsibility to advocate for their best interests. And the data or the information shows that the needs of the Black community as a group of Americans and all of the different groups that are represented here in our democracy, the African American is the one that is being denied their full dollar. And it is deliberate and intentional. And it is at the cost of other agendas being given more than $1. So they can receive $1.05. Somebody had to receive 95 cents. So they can receive $1.20. Somebody else had to receive 80 cents. So the woman in the workforce, for example, we can look at her as a microcosm of being a group represented inside of corporate America. In corporate America, for example, you can break those groups down as you measure diversity and inclusion. You can break them down by your predominant white group or the majority in corporate America, especially in the upper ranks. And then you can break it down into the diverse networks. Those networks might include African Americans. It might include the Hispanic network. It might include APEN or Asian Pacific Islander network. It might include LGBTQ as a network. It might include Native Indians as a network. It can take all of those groups and quantify the salaries that those groups receive and break that data down into quantiles. Who is at the lowest 25% quantile, the lowest quarter? Who is at the second lowest? How many of your employees, you feel me? And that same microcosm of one corporate space and how it can measure diversity and inclusion and how they redistribute the gains earned by their company from selling products and purchasing talent to sell more products. See, that's how you break it down as a real industrialist. If you ask me how I feel and whether or not I will get my reparations, my answer is still going to be affirmative. I can only confirm. I can only confirm. I would not be that Native American who says, well, we don't need an affinity group anymore, while still being in that bottom quintile. Native American, Hispanic, African American men are still bringing up that bottom quintile when it comes to household incomes. And it is that 80 cents on a dollar or 70 cents on a dollar, that 90 cents on a dollar that allows other groups to receive $1.10 or $1.08, $1.20, $1.30. And that's not even going into the wealth inequality. How do you get that reparations is what this show is about. And I'm sorry if you missed it, but that reparations is a political process that is a negotiation in the chambers of Congress in order to increase economic. You use political levers. That's a fact. Those political levers were exercised 2019 and before. It made it to the presidential stage as conversation. It made it into the Black YouTube sector as commentary. It made it through initiatives like the hashtag ADOS and the Breaking Brown Family, them over there. It's always been something discussed. And yet we have momentum stalled. We have a ball dropped when it matters. Thanks for your question. Last bullet point is, well, what is covered? So I had 4 bullet points, and I guess I did want to jump into what was actually covered to make sure people got it. So let's see. Of course, you still got NASA funding for Earth science. And as I said, the Social Security initiatives, other investments in those hardworking communities for Americans who are at war right now. You are at war for your 30% of your labor, which is going to Social Security that you may not benefit from. And their group is winning. As a subgroup, you can call it elders or dependents. You know, the military is still winning, of course. FDA, you know, they're still winning. Research, so they still have their think tanks. They're increasing some spending in some of their agencies. I see that. Let me give you one more. The Morning Ledger. Sorry, this is my email. I won't even go all the way into it. Damn, if I zoom that big, they want to hate on your boy. The Morning Ledger, proposal to fold U.S. audit watchdog into SEC raises some concerns. Let me give you a quick little image there. President Trump's budget proposal recommends consolidating the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board under the Securities and Exchange Commission. So what does that actually mean when you say what is actually being funded? What happens here when you absorb an independent audit watchdog into your government? So they used to watch and say, well, these are the corporations, and this is, we have audits on them, their diversity and inclusion, for example. And they would look at those quotas, those quintiles. They would say bottom 25th percentile. Why is the 90% of your African American and your Hispanics? This is an audit, for example. What are the salaries of 90 or of your African American and Hispanic male demographics? So that's an audit. We're going to come in, we're going to look at your books with your HR team, and we are going to actually look at your employees. And if you're a publicly traded company, right, that's an audit. That's an area of an audit, is in discrimination or hiring discrimination. For real, listen to the boy. These are gems. Maybe I'll be talking too fast, but we'll get into it. And then you're looking at that company from an external lens. You don't work for them, and you just get the data. Give me all of your published data on the salaries or the offer letters or what you pay by race. And then you can also look at it by gender or LGBTQ or whatever demographic you would advocate for. I am a Black man. I'll give you mines again. What was important to me as a Black husband, as a Black father, as a Black millennial. And then I'm also a veteran and, of course, a hardworking American. So those things trigger me, and that's what I'm going to be looking for. And so I'm not on that audit team, but this budget proposal suggests that they take that independent auditing company that used to be able to look at American publicly traded corporations and fold them under the government. And of course, in order to do so, you got to have more money to pay the salaries of those folks. So it's not just legal folks or people who got their law degree. You sometimes have creative folks, economists, NABA, the National Association of Black Accountants. They push out a lot of those type of graduates from HBCUs and so forth. GAO, Government Accountability Office. But now that other public one wants to be absorbed, how many people come into that? How many salaries is that? Is that $10 million? What is that number? Anyway, that's in their budget. So those are a couple of examples of the things that actually did make it into the budget. Fiscal year 2020, $4.8 trillion budget. Man, they did not let us in. And unlike them, I'm ready to talk about it. So that's what's on my mind. As you see, let me do this. Where am I at? I need this one. Copy that, Joan. And if there is anyone in the chat that would like to rock as I close this thing out, go on and right ahead and accept that link. Go on, come on up and have the conversation. $4.8 trillion. Could have rounded that up if we used our momentum appropriately. If we did not have political people just be pundits and have conversations. If they did not drop the ball, what happened? You tell me. When it actually mattered, when the budget is being proposed, it still matters right now because this is just the executive's budget. But that House, those those halls, chamber, Congress still has to do something. When I looked at the budget last time for lobbyists for the NAACP, they had about $500,000. Why is now not the time to make sure we get something on the budget? Use that $500,000 right now when it matters to ensure we get reparations in the budget. Why is now not the time for them to take action? Why are they so distracted with the same stories we could get distracted with? Celebrity worship is more important than them doing their damn jobs. And you hear me call them out all the time. I use them in debates all the time. The NAACP. We are competing, but there is momentum that was galvanized. Someone in YouTube or Google could probably crunch the numbers and get the real analytics on what that momentum actually looked like from the point of view of views. How many times was this information actually shared? How many different topics included Black reparations? How much buzz did it actually create? Did it even hit the who does the sound scan, the whatever it is? Did it hit SoundScan's radar as a trending topic? When was it hot? And now that you have $500,000 in your coffers, what will you do with that in order to ensure Black reparations hits that budget? That check is cut. And who the hell do we need to share this video with so that they know exactly how we feel about it, just in case they miss some of our live streams? Who needs this information? Which of your cousins still does not believe reparations for Black American descendants of slaves should be on the budget? Who does not believe in that? Which of your Black friends is still arguing against it? Which ones? Who do you need to share the information with in a small soundbite or even in just a conversation piece with what you've taken from this video? Who do we need to share it with so that the information can actually resonate and that they don't drop the ball here? You have a Democratic representative out of New York who says higher discretionary spending that makes it possible for Congress to responsibly fund the federal government. Responsibly. I'll tell you what's being responsible. It is the correction, the restorative justice of that reparations claim. That conversation can't keep getting put off. That check, it should be cut. $200 billion. You know, if you ask Brother Moses, you got the federal treasury right there. I would like that shit in, if you're asking Brother Moses, I would like that shit in, and you know how it says, let me give you $1 right here. At the top of the dollar, it says Federal Reserve note. I would want the Freedman Banks note. And it can come in denominations of 1s, 5s, 10s, 20s, 50s, and $100 bills. And as they print $200 billion worth of that currency, that is acceptable across the board. I don't need a food stamp, but I do need a symbolic victory right now. Cut the motherfucking check. For those who want to see it in a symbolic victory, go on and cut them the bills. For a nigga like me, shit, my bank account would love to see it. ETF, electronically transfer the funds. Bank error in your favor. Government Accountability Office. Stick with me. Securities Exchange Commission, absorbing government accountability. HR 40 to study and develop. Congressional Oversight Committee, Judiciary Committee. All of the elements needed and all of the key players involved have already been notified. Round that number up, $4.8 trillion. $5 trillion, and now you're talking my language. What's good, Dallas? What up, Dr. G? I saw my guy George Macon 2 in the building, 3rd degree, Taz Goat exclusive of the B1 Network, the Prophet of Thought series, Doug, the chief moderator, winner of the Moderators Award in 2019 for the Negro Manosphere, top mod on so many channels, another person who helps build this thing up and make sure that our Black YouTube space is collaborating. Diplomat, I would say. CRU Royalty, that foundational Negro who produces some of my music, Kenny Conjo, my cousin First Row, Nyla Says, the other half, the better half, if you ask me, of the B1 Network founders. So many more joined us in this live stream. Hopefully it was informative. Hopefully it's something that added a little bit of value as we continue to deliver the breaking news. $4.8 trillion budget proposal. I don't think it comes as much of a surprise to many people that there was not a Black reparations associated with his proposal, despite having Black conservatives come out and be very adamant about, you know, their president. This is our president. He's done more for us. I think they don't think in terms of reparations, but that they look at other bills and say, look, this opportunity zones is something Blacks should be taking advantage of. And that is a bill where Blacks who are already self-actualizing, who are already having no issues walking into a bank, filling out an application and getting the approval of white banking establishments, and they can operate in those spaces, great. They're good to go. Good credit score Negroes, middle class, hardworking Americans looking to take some more of their income and reinvest it in their futures, their legacy. Those folks, I think they're pretty good with some of the bills that have already been proposed. Those are universal bills. I would say they fall into the motto of the National Association for the Advancement of People of Color more than they fall into the categorization of Black first. It is not specific and unique. It doesn't do anything to address redlining. It's not government accountability for those banks that benefited, those banks that gave the higher interest rates for all of those years. So that interest, compound interest over time, if you talk economics with Brother Moses, you would understand that for year after year, there was a reparations claim that can be developed. It can only be developed, though, if it is studied. And it can only be studied if you have the components in place, like a National Association of Black Accountants, and that they have every means to go inside an American corporation in the financial industry and say, open your books as an independent audit. That's how that's how this game is played. Fortune 500, Fortune 200, Fortune 100. I can give you the data that says 4 Black CEOs. I can also give you the data that says hundreds more that are right there in that upper management C-suite. They're not the CEO or the president, but they're sitting at the table and they're influential in a way because they have taken steps to ensure that their companies are at least meeting regularly with their Black associates. They start those programs like affinity networks, and they use those affinity networks as a catalyst for career development for those African Americans who had otherwise been locked into the lowest quartiles. 25%. Look at their, and there's the women's network as another example. They're fighting as well a political and economic agenda inside those spaces, and they're using, skill building sessions. They're using fireside chats. They're using lunch and learns, and then they're also using their influence to reach out to hiring managers at lower levels in the company when new projects open up. And when they contact those hiring managers, oftentimes they have a recommendation or a list of 12 high potential candidates. Now, the NAACP is taking that and saying diverse talent, and that's what I don't agree with. I agree with this sentiment here. You are an African American in upper management and you're using your influence. I want to see 4 Black candidates on that list. I don't want to see my African Americans in upper management putting in lists or a list that contains names of the Asian talent or the person who got his STEM degree already. And so they're looking at IT instead of looking at selling IT as a business model of being able to translate data into insights, of being able to network and keep projects moving forward because you have people skills, those soft skills that they like to discredit and invalidate Black or diverse talent. Now, the women can argue, they can look at their numbers and say, we are getting paid 80 cents on the dollar. And in order to overcome that situation, here's the roadmap. And they can put in different agendas. We will have these trainings. We will offer, paid training, paid time off for those women. We will extend maternity leave by 2 or 3 weeks. These are the steps that they are taking, when they're fighting for their groups. And we are a group. And we have work to do. I don't want to see the upper management fighting for a list of other groups, because in those upper management, their groups are represented even more than we are. And their groups have the same tools at their disposal. And their groups seem to understand the value in putting a list together of people whose names fall within your group. The Indians are fighting for the Indians for these tech jobs. You don't get 5,000 people to work in a call center in India without an Indian fighting for Indians' jobs. You don't get H-1B visas for Indians and Nigerians without somebody saying, let's pull this group forward. You don't get labor law unless you have somebody at that table. And so we are still fighting for reparations. And it's not just a reparations claim. This is an ongoing civil rights struggle that we are involved in at all levels. It's not just political. Political is just one tool. Economics is in line, politics is in line with a democratic principle. Economics, or how we interact with corporate America, that is the capitalist. And the report that triggered me was the one that included at war with. I am a veteran. What are Black people going to do if we don't get reparations? Nothing. We have no leverage or power. Now, that is another interesting comment, and I am glad that y'all are interacting and rocking with us here today as we deliver the information. I thought it was going to be a lot shorter, but I got the news and the information out there first and foremost. Just to highlight, $4.8 trillion budget proposal does not include Black reparations. No big surprise there. I think we have work to do. No big surprise. 4 bullets that I dropped. Momentum. Who dropped the ball? When it matters, and what was actually covered. So that's all included. Now I'm just into the conversational piece. Hopefully I don't have to keep giving data and this person said. And if you go to the Census Bureau of 2012, and if you look at the Black demographics review, it shows you this, and these are the median incomes and things like that. That information you should already know. Hopefully I'm adding value, telling you about these corporate struggles that we have to go through. As Black talent, you still got to fight for your interests as a Black person. These other groups seem to understand that. They seem to want to make Black men conform or code switch. And if the Black man isn't the one code switching, then the Black man does not end up on the list put forward by the upper management of other groups. The upper management of other groups will put a Black man on their list if he code switches, if he believes in diverse talent. And I'm African American, but we're so post-racial. Why do you bring it up? Why is that something that even matters? But with an effective National Association of Black Accountants audit on that same company, you will find the same facts demonstrated by Black demographics. You will find those same facts if they're looking at it from, women make 70 cents or 80 cents on the dollar. Economic struggle is just as real as the other struggle, but I have a personal stake in this because the first story that I dived into dealt with Social Security. And when I looked at my taxes and I want my tax return, I'm looking at the numbers on what I made or what I brought in. And then I start looking at the potential of what my life could have lived like and how much tricking I could have done supporting Black businesses. supporting Black YouTube, Black content creators, supporting the information, reinvesting in people who think like I think, so that I don't have to feel so alone, and that I am better equipped to go up against those who would say, do you really believe we're getting reparations? Bruh, I'm the right one to ask that. I'm not the dude waiting. My struggle is real. I am not a millionaire yet, and everything points towards, well, Moses, if you're not a millionaire, what are you as an individual doing to get it? And you're asking somebody who is deeply rooted in what they would call the Northern California, that Bay Area socialist way of thinking. We are us. Heavy gang culture, very communal, very tribal, very cliquish, very in-group, very churchified people. That's what I kind of relate with. The ones who felt like their communities were dependent or ran or governed by the biggest Black church leaders therein. If your community was going to benefit from any type of halfway housing for those African Americans who had been unjustly locked up, and now they're looking to make their transition back into society, where can they live? Where can they work? If you were dependent, if the job applications had discriminatory language written into the application, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And that being used as leverage against your group, because of course you've been convicted of a felony. Those were the people who wrote the bill at your local level to ensure the behaviors that you were demonstrating were outlawed. So they know you have a felony. Those folks who were creating the jobs in the spaces near your uncles and aunties, and also denying the creation of jobs, denying the small business loans in those areas, those outgroups competing for that dollar, using their political power or influence. They were able to get laws on the book. They were able to get it written into the budget. When it's time to start closing schools, they can look at you and say, they ain't gonna do shit if we shut down their schools. They would rather build another road to nowhere before they acknowledge or appreciate the Black contribution. And in order to maintain this status quo, they continue to say, well, it's not going to happen. They continue to pump up that military. So just in case you Negroes are not aware, there's a tank with a sabot round that weighs 45 pounds. It's not even needed. Keep the sabot in the ammunitions depot. There is a technology that big that can end it all. It is one of the most powerful tools at the disposal of any man, really. And it is deeply rooted in what I do here. The oral tradition. They can kill entire communities with a word. They can say it and it is so. Influence, power. They can go to a board meeting, out groups. Our groups, we can be there. We can have a seat at that very same table. But it will only be a few of you niggas and never enough to galvanize an energy at that table. You can make it into upper management. You can represent the best interests of the best of your high potential talent. And yet, once you get there, what you will have are other groups ready to beat your ass with a word. $4.8 trillion will go to those other groups. The part that you will benefit from is drastically reduced. At best, you can say you will get about the same amount you got this year. No forecast in inflationary terms. Salaries made 2% increase. Job market. So you can expect to get about as much as you got this year. It will be on you as an individual to get more if you want more. But when it comes to collective, $4.8 trillion fiscal budget, everybody, whatever it might be, all of us, American households, or however you want to look at it, $4.8 trillion budget. We'll see. All right, let's see if there's something else there. Who else? ADOS King, ADOS Kingdom. I thought I dropped the link in the chat. Is he not here with me? Let me stop sharing this. Maybe it's that. Somebody, ADOS Kingdom, has some comments. And I want to make sure that I'm acknowledging it because that is a big love for you to be here rocking with us today. And let me make sure I do that one more time. Let me know if this is working. Damn, I might as well have kept my music on if they're going to have an ice cream truck outside. I kind of like mine better than theirs. But let's see. It looks like there was something said, look how this guy acting like he don't see my comments. Was that for me? Bitter grapes. You aren't willing to build something for your people, so you say it's impossible to try. So let's start with that one. And then I'm going to do this for this guy because he obviously doesn't know who the fuck he's talking to, or she, or they. So Sacramento, California. Damn, I wish I can do this shit to where it actually gets to my motherfucking name. Sacramento, California, Del Paso Heights. Because these people be weird, asking, well, what are you doing or something like that. So the Greater Sacramento Urban League is one of the biggest legacy initiatives that I can tell you I have been a part of when it comes to grassroots campaigning. This was not here for us. In my neighborhood, there used to be the military where our parents and uncles and aunties used to be able to work. Once that military base shut down, then the Black demographic inside of our neighborhood, so Sacramento, California, I'm gonna give you a history lesson and tell you why it's important. Sacramento, California, it's broken into groups, and some of those most violent and troubled at-risk spaces in DPH had the highest unemployment. The housing market got beat the hell up. It was one of those spaces where we actually needed political activism on the grassroots campaign. And so that required being able to connect and socialize certain concepts amongst Black pastors, amongst Black activists, those pastors then being able to disseminate that information down to their deacons, their deacon boards. They could push it using their 501c3 power or structure, but getting that message to the men who actually had jobs and had some leverage, those trustees, people investing in the church and making sure that the biggest church is inside of our neighborhood. So let me do this just to show you how this all connects. Calvary Christian Center. Got to give this guy some information just in case they were talking to me. Calvary Christian Center, biggest church, as I said, we were dependent upon the major churches. We were codependent. They were viewed as our leaders. This is the biggest church inside where I come from, Northern California, Sacramento, California. Black Panthers out of Oakland, California. This is the pastor of the mega church when I was in high school, and they started taking the younger folks and getting them involved in the political and economic process. When we needed that summer job, if it wasn't the summer job we were working, then we were probably getting into trouble because we were at-risk youth who were very tribal, gang related, and they needed grants and scholarships to invest in the people inside of those neighborhoods. We needed an intervention. We needed a program after we were being locked up for truancy, skipping class, or whatever that was, for being suspended from school. And now we are at home where there is we had issues and challenges in our community. And I feel like I might have to Negro explain it just so you understand why this makes sense. This is the mega church in my community. And these are some of the works that I fall under. This is where you would say if you had a teacher or the hard lessons on life and where you got it from. Now zoom in on that map so you can understand and appreciate this content and not think that I'm just somebody that you can come up and have a debate with on it. The link is in the chat and available for you whenever you are ready to take it. But this map here, let me see if they'll zoom in for you. I'll do it this way just to make sure you get it. Now you know who the mega church pastor is, And you know why that mattered. I'm in high school and these streets are calling, and I have an idea where my parents are not poor, but they got enough money to make the bills. But if I want anything in my life, I have to hustle to go get it as an individual inside of some of the meanest streets. Do you know what it takes to be a gang member inside, or a drug dealer inside the meanest streets of a highly impoverished community? Do you know what it takes? What you got to be, what kind of mentality you have to possess first and foremost to even be a drug dealer? But there ain't no more jobs. There ain't no summer jobs for you black niggas, and you're being discriminated against. And one of the things that you're going to have to do in order to even get that job is fill out an application. And that application has on it, have you been convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor? And we were being locked out of every avenue towards economic mobility, even as kids. And we had no other alternatives but to look to who our leaders was. So let me show you why this shit matters, since you think you're talking to somebody who can't be challenged on an intellectual level. God damn it, I wish I could show you not just this $291,000, the bills and the projects that I've worked on and are still continuing to reap hundreds of thousands of dollars for benefits, and it's still not enough in the neighborhood where I worked at. Now, you show me the same or the equivalent of a Marysville Boulevard beautification project, one that earned more than $291,000. Drop your link in the chat, and let me moderate you up just in case you want to drop your link in the chat to let me know what your works are. Let me take it a step further and showboat a little bit. Council member Alan Warren. This is my district, District 2. This is my motherfucking cousin. We got work to do. Play cousin. You know, they were raised in the same neighborhood. Ricky Jordan, the baseball player, went to the Philadelphia Phillies. He's closer to being blood cousin than Alan Warren, but that is my cousin. That is somebody I can pick up the phone and call right now and say, hey, what's going on? And he'll let me know. I'll ask, when was the last time you went by Ma's house? And he knows exactly what I'm talking about. My grandmother's house is a place where he was always welcome to a meal. My grandmother being the same lady who was the lunch lady at that same Grant High School. And if this lady here, let me zoom on in. I wish you could see it right there. The people in these photos that you see here, when it comes to diverse talent, these are my people. These baseball teams. If you have ever been to the Negro Manosphere, you'll find O'Shea Duke Jackson, also from the same place. He will sometimes drop in tidbits about Del Paso Heights, and he will sometimes mention a woman by the name of Miss Velma Strong. And Miss Velma Strong was the lady when we did not have a baseball league. She was the lady who started that as an after-school program for at-risk youth in our community. That is activism at the Grassroots campaign, at the floor. And when I tell you we needed hundreds of thousands of dollars to even get to the point of having a greater Sacramento urban league, let me give it to you. Let me put it on the screen so you can see my works and not think that I'm just saying the shit to be seeing it. If I could walk you through the hollowed halls of our urban league, you would see my name on even that plaque as somebody who fought to even get that opportunity there in my neighborhood with my council members and the people who you saw his name. Call him. He'll tell you that's my little cousin. Morehouse College costs $48,000 a year. I went to the military to try to get a GI Bill to be able to afford college, and it still wasn't enough. My parents were not in a position with exceptional talent coming from where I came from. And I still managed to graduate top of my class 10 years later in my 30s. At the top HBCU that a black man could attend. Miss me with your bullshit if you ask me about my works. Are you willing to build something for your people? So, you aren't willing to build something for your people, so you say it's impossible to try. Stop the madness. You're not talking to that person. Don't bring that negative energy here in this space. We have real work to do. And I don't always have time to toot my own horn about the work that I do. This media space is for us to get the message out. And that's what I do here. It takes a different caliber nigga to come up in Del Paso Heights. to become a pillar therein and to still be able to make that phone call at the highest levels. So I told you about corporate America as an analogy. But if you're at that point, I assume you are, ADOS Kingdom, since you are dropping these type of comments in the chat and you're saying the guy is not responding. Let's see what this one is. You want to stay here and give up and go at it as an individual. Maybe the information is going right over their head. I am the socialist guy, very tribal, raised in a community that believed in the community because that was all we had. If no one else, we had to look out for each other. So now that I'm in corporate America, I talk about the affinity networks. I still talk about the quintiles as you measure income, even in corporate America. I talk about the National Association of Black Accountants being the people who can perform the audits in publicly traded companies. Fortune 500s, 200s, Fortune 100 companies, and why it's important for us to have those people representing our best interests as a group. I then take that information and say, now those are some of the initiatives that are happening. I don't think you understand. I'm not talking in hypotheticals, nigga. These are facts. You may not agree with them. You may not see it with your own eyes. You may not pick up your phone and call these people. But to say I don't would be just a mischaracterization. I am not the individual. This is the B1 network. I am a contributing op-ed or contributing or affiliate member of the B1 network for a reason. The word network said that is a good space where I can deliver information. This same lane, the information, the style, the presentation, it's a little bit different. You'll get a little bit of a flavor of what maybe a Taz B1 exclusive, the GOAT might deliver once I start getting impassioned. But for the most part, I try to stay away from that. I try to just present the information. Those are the facts. Let's move forward. It was $4.8 trillion of a budget proposed by the executive office, but that budget did not include me. I get triggered by such things and I like to talk about it. That message might be for somebody in your circle. Salute, Chaos Reign. Thanks for joining me up here, man. I thought I was going to be talking to myself, but it looks like I absolutely got at least one who is finding some benefit in the conversation. Let's turn it into a dialogue. What's good with you? You can go off mute.
Good, man. You hear me?
Yes, sir. I do hear you. And you got to forgive me. I don't have the tool that would allow me to turn your mic up even more. So we're just going to work with what we got. All right.
Okay. I just popped in, so I saw you had the link and you were talking about a budget. I'm not sure if you'll do a quick recap to me about what trillion our budget you're talking about. Like, not too lengthy, but just a brief, but
Yep. So it's just the budget for the federal government. They always put one out. They kind of project or forecast what their spending should look like. That gives us some time. And so $4.8 trillion, as we know, $19 trillion is what our gross national product is. And we break down the economy based off of our spending allocations. 4.8 trillion out of that 19 is saying that they're growing a little bit. They want to grow their stake in what we do as a country or as a company, as I would call it. So let me show you here, federal budget. For a review, the federal government spent approximately $600 billion during 2016 calendar. No, that's not the one that I want. Anyway, the federal budget overall is just out of all the taxes that they've collected in order to operate roads, infrastructure, anything like that, how much will they be spending? Things like that. Everything else can go back to the household. Everything else can be relevant to you, but there's a couple of big ones. Healthcare is always going to be one. The Defense Department is always going to be another major one. Defense, Homeland Security, Department of Agriculture, any of those ones they're saying. So Department of Agriculture, for example, they have to get a budget approved. Let's say they want to spend $50 billion for agriculture. Right. So agricultural subsidies is one of those things where we have 4 major private companies like Tyson, and there's a couple of other ones. One of those ones is actually owned by the Brazilian government, but it's a private company that provides the lion's share of our food stuff. So whether you go to Walmart, whether you go to wherever you go to get your groceries, and even some of our restaurants, the food stuff, the chicken, the actual birds, all of that shit is a part of the agricultural sector. They take everything from that sector. They tax it a little bit and say, here's what we need from you as a contribution. And then they reallocate it. So those sectors, our homes, how will we be impacted? That's what I was looking for. Anyway, that's all I got right there on what is the federal budget. It's just the government saying we plan on spending this percentage of the gross national product for 2020. I could probably do that in my head, but what is 19? What is that? 4.8 of what is 4.8 of that 19? It's probably less than 20%. And so it seems like it's a good mix. I would say they could probably do a little bit more. If you ask me, I am on the very liberal side. I do believe in bigger government, but that's only because I also believe that we have been excluded. So the inclusion of reparations would be an addition of, let's say, if we use the presidential candidate, what is her name? Elizabeth Warren. If we used her $200 billion for the next 10 years, then what we're looking at is a fiscal budget then of not 4.8, but of actually $5 trillion. And so next year, 2021, if they, with that $200 billion in there, if they saw more growth, then it might go up to 5.1. So they would start hovering around that 20%. Our economy or our gross national product, 20% of that is the federal government spending. Anyway, that's a long-winded way of just kind of breaking it down. But what's good with you, though? What are your thoughts on it?
You know, I always wonder how much they're really spending on education this year. That's my little bit more focus, because one thing that's needed is food, clothing, shelter, education. Because different up there, I want to know how much they really put it into education this year alone for the fiscal year budget. That's my little bit.
That is a good one. Damn, am I still sharing the screen? Let me reduce this a little bit. Let me see how I bring you up. There you go. Yeah, that would be a good one too, man. I know, who is it? The Department of Education. I stopped actually following their numbers with Arnie Duncan. He kind of came in and stabilized the amount of school closures. And that was something that our community had been impacted by significantly. The spaces where we were closest to, those schools were the ones being written out. Those were the schools that they were hitting with that stamp of failing school. And they were saying, we don't have enough for the teachers and all of that. And so they tried one thing in the 90s. I don't know if you remember this, but they tried to go after tobacco. And so that would be an initiative by the federal government from, what is it? The Department of, Agriculture probably still covers it a little bit, but the Food and Drug Administration is one of the departments that would oversee it, but ATF, things like that. Those departments are actual people who got a degree or whatever, and they work for the federal government. Their salary, their benefits, their healthcare, all of that. And what they did was they actually filed one of those audits or a claim against big tobacco. There's only a few major big families still that sell most of the cigarettes available at all of our gas stations and wherever cigarettes can be sold. All of that entire industry of tobacco is still governed by a few families. And so in order to get some justice or a restorative justice claim, it wasn't about the emphysema, but they took all of those healthcare cases, they investigated them, they did the study on it. And they said tobacco is killing this many American citizens. And then they took that and they did that from they got partnerships or collaborations with the American Medical Association, their presidents and their chairman. They partnered there, they met, they had the conversations. We need data that shows this, or we need data on X, Y, and Z from the hospitals. So they went to places like Kaiser, which used to have a Black CEO during those times. And shout out to that guy. I actually attended college with one of his sons. He has a couple of sons, though, who I've actually met personally. And so Kaiser then was able to use their big budget, Kaiser being the space, if you did have an emergency, but you didn't have a healthcare, and especially in our neighborhoods, you didn't have a close clinic. If you needed the ambulance to take anybody for whatever reason, diabetes, sugar, a panic attack, whatever it was, whatever you needed for your basic amenities, food, clothes, shelter. I say hospitals are one when we come in a social society, but those hospitals, Black CEO, and your access to those hospitals and what it would cost you and your family if you had to be brought in an emergency to our hospitals. That was a Black CEO who had to move on that initiative and make that space open and available. Other than that, people who were poor were not able to afford the doctors and the doctor's time. And so what do you have? You can't walk in and tell the doctor, pay me less. You got to either go through a bank and they'll say, well, you can take out a loan You got to go through your house and say, well, take out an extra mortgage, but this is the bill for the services related, or the service for the services rendered. And Black folks who were from poor or broke and only getting 80 cents on a dollar, 70 cents, we needed people in high spaces to be our advocates just to make hospitalization accessible to us. And so, long story longer, Kaiser in the 90s was one of those spaces, but that type of leadership model needed governing. It needed people that he could connect with. The AMA, in order to move on this tobacco initiative, long story short, long story longer, let me see. Let me put it on the screen so the people who can just jump to my conclusion. I know sometimes I ramble on and on, but tobacco settlement 1998 is what I'm referring to. So an audit of a major family, a couple of families, and you're able to actually get them to open their books. But who will be bold enough? Do you have a National Association of Black Accountants who can actually go to them and have them open up their books? Or will they take their books and say, no, that's trademarked? How we make money is trademarked, and then take that trademark model and put it in Ireland and put that, their books, their accounting model, their ability to show and prove, put it somewhere else where it's no longer even accessible to the American government. We don't have access to those numbers, so we can't really audit our corporations. They have an immunity from us through that protection. So anyway, that settlement was one that was supposed to invest in public education. That was one of the ones that was supposed to be billions of dollars that actually funds public education. Other than that, how does public education get its money? I got to tell you that it's through the taxes that are collected from the residents in that community. So if your federal government has shut down the military base where Black people worked, and then, discretionary spending and all of that thing, but they shut down the military base where the Black people in your community worked, and then the companies, private companies, people investing in their own entrepreneurial endeavors who service the members of the community, the people who would buy that McDonald's franchise right there on Del Paso or Marysville Boulevard, where mega church owner operator Reverend Dr. Philip Godot teaches every Sunday. Some Wednesdays he has a youth pastor who also teaches, who was somebody who I can call to this day. Shout out Crandall Rankins, the youth minister at the time. But Philip Godot, who has a high population Black community, low income Black community, Black households, mainly unemployed, being targeted on the application, and now facing school closures. So total public education, that budget, that fight was one that we needed. And the information was needed through partnerships, AMA, American Medical Association and such. And they got the information that said, you're killing this many people. The hospitals were through their partnership with people like Black CEO Tyson, or Bernard Tyson, who just passed. Nonetheless, I did some information on that on a previous stream. I was one of the first people that I connected with on LinkedIn, the CEO of Kaiser Permanente. And so reaching out to him, because Kaiser was the hospital when we had emergency situations that we would go to, because we didn't have medical insurance. And Kaiser was a space, Black CEO, that had hospitals accessible to African Americans. And I lived in a space that was high risk, at risk. It was very tribal. It was very tribal. And shit happened. And so with that partnership, Chaos Reign, they're able to then lock in and say, well, how do we fund this? Where do we get the money from? And that's why they brought the lawsuit against the private owned companies in the tobacco industry. And those billions of dollars were something to which was supposed to be allocated. Today, they use like a lottery. So those scratch off tickets that you'll see at your gas stations or whatever, money from that lottery system or Powerball, things like that, gambling, monies from that is actually earmarked to support the public education system. But the fact is, it's not enough. And when their groups get to fighting for the schools in their areas, they're coming with a community that has not been When you look at the application, there is nothing on that application that is discriminating against their group. Do you wear tight fucking ugly Levi jeans every motherfucking day of the week if you could? If that was on the application and something that they were using to qualify folks out of the market, they would have been gone. Their application is gone. If the application included information like, can you name 5 Motown artists from the 60s, 70s, or 80s? If that was on the application, they're gone. They're like, no, I probably can't. Can you name 5 great pop cinema movies that featured a Black leading role? They would be gone. They're like, I know Samuel L. Jackson, but they probably couldn't. If that's the information that's on the application, of course, it sounds unreasonable. But again, so would be, have you been convicted of a felony if your leaders were the ones who had the influence and power? Our leaders, we had reverence. And so we used the reverence that we had. So let me jump back in it. We use our family. We have a social thing. We have a collective worldview, not just the individual and what an individual can contribute, but what as a community are you focusing on? I'm trying to bring out the District 2 map just so I can make sure this brother who said that shit earlier knows what I'm talking about here. So this is Rio Linda Boulevard, Marysville Boulevard. Marysville Boulevard loops around and becomes Del Paso Boulevard. And then it goes all the way down. So as you're seeing here, what I want to show you is the hotspot of where I was raised. This is District 2. This is my district. So when you ADOS folks say, well, do you even know your people? And we need grassroots campaigns. You're not talking to Brother Moses. At least save that for somebody else's chat, or at least have the benefit of the doubt. That energy just doesn't fly here. When I say we got work to do, it's not because I'm not somebody who's actually doing it. But it is because I know that even doing so, $291,000, and it's still in perpetuity for the campaigns and things that are still in operation today. And that's not just my legacy, but the contribution. And I'll still pick up the phone and make that phone call. But yep, this is us.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
And let me do this. Our schools in this area were the ones that were highly targeted. We did lose the funding. Let me tell you how funding actually impacts schools if they don't just close the schools right out. I know you want to find what is the big budget. How much do we actually spend? That's a good one. So let's talk about that. And from my lens, we can't nearly spend enough. There's people who say STEM, but I'll tell you this, that mechanics shop, that class in high school was one of the best courses. Mechanics, auto mechanics was a course, but it's cut. You're out of here. Those home ec courses, those was the ones that the different foods, the recipes. Why? Because it was an entire kitchen. Why? Because my mama and dad didn't have enough money to feed us breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We needed reduced lunch program, and even that little breakfast slice wasn't enough. And you're listening to someone whose grandmother worked at that same high school, right? If you keep following this road, it's Grant High School. And if you find Brother Moses, Marysville Boulevard beautification project, it was millions of dollars that were invested, and it leads right in front of our mega church, or my spiritual teacher at the time, Dr. Philip Godot, the Black Panther, straight out of Oakland, socialist political agenda. The teachers and the influence and the what are you doing isn't a sit around and wait. It isn't a reparations will be this and that. It is grassroots campaigns that originate as ideas that are shared amongst men, socialized amongst that collective, Black pastors, Black deacons, working class, hardworking American Black folk who respect and move on, get this, our group's best interests. Not just economically, do you shop Black? Yes, my barber was Black. I've always found Black barbers and Black barber shop owners. They may not own the land. They may rent the whole space, but that's where I shop. Anyway, and that is Marysville Boulevard project. There are a number of different highlight events, if you want to say, for the collective or show your works that I can jump to. These are just the ones that come off of the top of my head. Now, when they are ready to show me where they're contributing at this level, or where their works are still resulting in this type of impact, economic, then we can talk economics. And Grant High School, that Marysville beautification project was also coupled with a community garden, and that became a business that is still thriving. And I shared that information on another stream. And so that's there as well. Appreciate you joining me, twin man. What's good, bruh?
Well, what's up, man? I saw that you were doing a topic on the budget and reparations, and I wanted to join in. So I put in the comment section, show me your budget, and I'll show you your priorities. We already know what this government's priority has always been. I'm a member of the military, so I know this well. The majority of the money is going to go. I'm talking about discretionary spending now. It's usually going to go towards things like the military. If you noticed over the last few years, they've increased the military budget of, it went from like 700 billion to almost, it's getting inching closer and closer to $1 trillion for just for military spending. And then we got to understand, just not the budget, you have to look at all the appropriation bills they pass over the year, through the year as well, and other bills as well, like that big ass tax cut. So if you look at the budget for this year, all these deep cuts to like education, the proposed cuts to Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, things like that, is to pay for that big ass tax cut. So as you have people,
they call it cuts.
Right, as you have people in the Republican Party sitting here talking about, oh, we don't need more government, and you're trying to be a socialist, they're practicing socialism in reverse. You're giving extremely rich people who do not need the money more money. And what do? They cut the services and things that we need, we use, our children need and use, to sit here and pay rich people more money. You were just talking about the programs that were in high school. When I was in high school, you had the auto shop class. You had the plumb. You could be a certified plumber by the time you got out of my high school. All stuff like that was cut. You could get an apprenticeship to be an electrician.
That's right.
Because they had classes like that in my school. You could, instead of going to DeVry, you could get a computer programming. They had a computer programming course at my high school. So it was a lot of things that's been cut over the years. And if you think about it, Brother Moses, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I am 37 years old.
So we are the same age. There's only been one president, one administration in our entire life that has not cut taxes. And when he raised taxes, he served one term. Do you remember that president?
There was one. Say that again.
There was only been one president that hasn't cut taxes in our lifetime. And when he raised taxes, he served one term. Who's the president?
I have no idea.
Ford? If I'm right. Or
What'd you say? I mean, Chaos?
The Ford, or was it what's the game?
No, it was George Bush Sr. Read my lips, no new taxes. He raised taxes and his ass got voted out. Every other administration has cut taxes. But cutting taxes is basically socialism in reverse, to give other people who don't need money, because they have this supply side economics theory that if you give extremely rich entrepreneurs money, it'll trickle down on the rest of us.
That's right.
Where's the trickle? Because the only thing they're going to keep doing is cutting program after program after program, and soon they're gonna go heavily after Head Start, heavily after Social Security, because the national debt and deficit is going to get so high, they're going to have no choice. But instead of doing what they should do, is raise the marginal tax rates on these rich motherfuckers who don't need the money, they'll cut our shit. And it's just not right. So that's just my take on this budget, man. You show me your budget, I'll show you the priorities of the nation.
That's right. As an individual, I would say the same. Show me your household budget and I'll show you what your priorities are.
Right.
I tell my wife that all the time. I was like, do you know how much I actually, she knows it. At some point, she was like, Moses, you spend a lot on super chats and stuff. Why do you do that? I was like, because I don't have time to wait for the Fortune 500s, the McDonald's, and all of them to finally acknowledge and appreciate what we do here, and for them to put the pressure on Google to get us our AdSense, to share our messages, our media. We have networks, we have strong content, we can compete against Comcast and all of that, but they are muting us. And so we're not sitting around waiting. We support us. And even to the point where us supporting us is still not enough. At the end of the day, we were the ones who did it. And so we that's all we got. That's all we need then. Fuck it.
I feel you. I feel you. So for example, you were talking about.
Oh, go ahead.
You were talking about the agricultural sector, right, Brother Moses?
Yes, sir. Man. I actually put the budget on the screen for those folks. Twin Man did bring this out, and so they'll show you there. This was 2010. We can kind of scale the numbers to today. I just brought up the first one that was available, but it shows you how that budget grows over time. That's $244.8 billion just for the Army. It's a subsection. The Marines, 142 for the Navy, and then 170 for them. I said $2 billion for us. People would argue against me as if I'm being unrealistic. Go ahead, Twin.
So
Go ahead, you got it.
You were talking about the agricultural sector earlier and how they have their slice of the budget. But see, did you mention how because of the tariffs, he had to give them an additional, this is before the budget was even passed. He signed into law a $30 billion bailout bill for them, for the agricultural sector, because of the tariffs, because of the trade war he's engaged in right now. So again, it's just not the budget. Look at all the appropriation bills during the year. All this ties into the budget. Because now where are they going to have to find that $30 billion? Oh, that's right. They're going to cut SNAP. They're going to cut Head Start. So you got to always look. It's a shell game. And it's the simplest shell game on the planet. Anywhere where they're going to give somebody some money, they're going to take from the average American. And they've effectively tricked a lot of Americans to believe that's the best route to go. Because if you think about it, some of the poorest states in the entire union are Republican states.
Mm-hmm.
The poorest state in the nation is Mississippi. As states like Mississippi, Arkansas, help me out, Brother Moses. What's another good one? Mississippi, Arkansas, Iowa's one. They get a whole lot of farm subsidies. They'll sit here and they'll get on states like New York, California, Jersey. They'll get on the coast talking about the money that's spent. But the coasts are the ones who provide majority, if not all, the damn money in taxes to the nation.
When you say that, I know California's agricultural section, that was a battle too, right? So nearly 1 million exposed to, this is what they say. Let me get to where I wanted to go. When was the California water crisis? Now, there used to be water wars in California, all the way back in the early 1900s, all the way through today. And what happens is the agricultural sector is made up of private owners, right? Big farm owners, some own big ass lands. You'd be surprised how much land can actually be acquired by one family or one household. But anyway, now that they got those waters, I mean, those that much land, and they want to do farming, you're talking about people who are drinking the rivers, the natural flow of water in an entire state for miles upon miles of water is being consumed by these farmers. These farmers then had to band together, or owners, private folks had to band together and fight against, politically as a group, against the federal government, because the federal government wanted to regulate water in those places. And so some of the people, let me do this. Let me show you that. Damn it. Which one was it? Give me a sec. All right, this one right here. This is a great example right here. Appreciate that. So farming and agriculture, what does that mean in our sector? Sacramento, for example, Department of Water and Recreations, I think that's what it's called. Department of Water Recreation, I think it's called. These are the people who feel like they can come in and regulate. It's a big department, and oftentimes the departments themselves are just broken into maybe 20, 30 people at a time, but they have certain functions that they perform. In those functions, it's the levels that increase your livelihood inside of their cities. So utilities, how are your partnerships with the utilities company? In California, we know that there was the rolling blackouts, things like that. So the government regulatory body, how much money do they receive? What power do they have? And how does that impact the relationships of the people who live there? As we also see, it maintains the water. So that is the relationship between the agricultural farmers and the people who actually benefit. So those farmers are the private company. And when they're lobbying or advocating for higher subsidies, what they want is that, you know how much water it takes? They don't want water gallons to be $1. They don't even want it to be 1 cent. They want their water gallons to be less than a cent because they have that much fucking land. Right? Hold on, players. Y'all can come in and y'all come in just a little quietly. The kids did come home. Don't mind them, podcast style. So when it comes to water and governance, that is the big one. Agricultural subsidies, when you say taxation or tariffs or whatever, subsidies then is your water allocation or your water rights. For us as households, we don't think that, oh, that has nothing to do with us, agricultural subsidies that they receive. But what is your water bill? Do you get a higher water bill because they gave the subsidies to the farmers, or do you get a lower water bill because they said, you know what, we're not going to remove this tax on you. You will pay the full $1 per gallon. What happens if our farmers have to pay the full $1 per gallon? What crops do we lose? What, you know, anything like that? Are they able to keep those fields up and our food supply fully flourished? Anyway, that's big. That's macro. That is very big. I'm at the 40,000 foot view because I speak from Reparations. 40 acres. And what would you do with 40 acres of land cultivation and development? 40 acres of farmland would require so much water that this alone is worth more than the $200 billion that I even asked for.
Right. Because that land, that 40 acres would quite literally keep producing for you for generation after generation after generation. So that 250 would be a drop in the bucket.
That's right.
Think what you can build just off that farmland. You can just go from not only are you producing a product that you can sell to other chains. I'm talking Walmart, Target, Costco, Giants. You see what I'm saying? Or just the mom and pop store. But now you could actually open your own in a sense of you can open your own, maybe fresh fruit market, maybe fresh produce market, something like that of that nature. That's how a chain is created.
That's right.
So again, there's a lot of things that goes into owning land. You can own 40 acres because people don't realize how much 40 acres really is.
They don't.
Like you could take some of that land, you could develop it out. You never know. You can build a little housing complex. I'm not talking about projects. I'm talking about houses, having affordable housing for Black people, things of that nature. There's a lot of things you can do with 40 acres. You could be farming out some of it. You could be renting out some of it. You can be building on some of it. You can do a lot with 40 acres. So, I mean, Brother Moses, I like how you're talking.
That's right. See, now they don't think that it's, city boys. I think they have a certain privilege. They don't see that this looks exactly like that house in Alabama where my grandma, it's a little bitty too bad. This house right here, who tells me that they want to pay $150,000 for this? If you can tell me that that's you, then go on. There are some homes that are right there available for you. This is your $150,000 in my neighborhood. So the struggles that we have in Sacramento, California are so big that you have to think bigger. You have to think water rights, taxes, subsidies, tariffs, that trade-off between negotiating parties, between private and government, who gets what benefit, who gets charged the most or who gets charged the least. These are the big conversations we got to have, twin man. They can't expect us to only look at it from the lens of my own personal tax return. That's just not how it works. 40 acres is bigger than the entire, look, I'm going to do it this way. Let me hit that. 40 acres is bigger than the entire sector of Del Paso Heights where I was raised. So now this is a bigger map here. I wish they would get this the fuck off my screen so I can show you this. How do I minimize this side so I can do that? They is not rocking with me right now. I want the map by itself. But anyway, this is McClellan Air Force Base right here. And as you look at land and how land breaks down, McClellan Air Force Base used to be one of those feeder locations for our community. Here's the major freeway artery for transportation, Department of Transportation. As you see here, it's called Dry Creek or Arcade Creek. So the regulation of water, and they say the hazardous water or the conditions of the water or the water pipelines that run out of that and feed right into your community. And then as you get into a community, this is the Del Paso Heights that I'm referring to. The high school itself that was at one time looked at as being a failing school, Marysville Boulevard. This is Grant High School. This is where Del Paso Heights, if you Google it, you'll see all of those crime statistics and all of that people like to use is what about crime in Chicago, as they'll say. But that was what I grew up with, the at-risk youth. This is Grand Avenue, the major artery right here. On this corner used to be a gas station where we used to hang out as those local folks. You'll see land right here, and the individual would say, where are the African Americans who would buy this land? That's one way of thinking about it, twin man. But then there's our major store or development here. This is a grocery store that was recently purchased by the Mexicans. It serves mostly, if you look at the products on their shelves, products that are made in Mexico. In order to even have the shelves full with black products on those cabinets, you gotta talk 40 acres, and that's just for one store. This was the post office. As we know, that goes back to Wells Fargo. Post office being established shows you just how long this community has been here. So they would focus on this lot and say, well, why aren't you buying this lot? I can show you where the black businesses were on this street. But most importantly, what I can show you is that this building here is that same Greater Sacramento Urban League in the heart of Del Paso Heights, for that person in the chat who wanted me to show my works. This building was like a $20 million edifice that if you're able to walk in the front door, you would still see my name on that plaque, which is right up the street from the high school that I attended. And you can walk into Grant High School, walk into here, right here. I'm showing you on the map. Whenever you're ready to get Grassroots and go check it out, walk into this building and look at the plaque that's on the wall before you get to the office and look for the name Moses Jenkins. I'm still on that plaque. A pillar in my community. I don't like to be challenged and I don't like to toot my own horn. But when I say we got work to do, it is because as you move along this Marysville Boulevard, this was the Marysville Boulevard beautification project that had to be sold as a way to help regulate traffic. High-speed chases on this street here were deadlier for the people who would just stand on the corner. It wasn't even as deadly for the damn driver. It was more deadly to the niggas that was standing on the corner. This 5,000 household families, predominantly black, we used to kick it over here. Whenever people had problems with our tribe, they could bring it right here because we were standing there. And as you continue to move, this is the South Avenue. This is my grandmother and the families that were there. These are our blocks. These are ours. This is when you say individual level, this is where we're at. And the failure for blacks to be able to take this that they call $200,000 of a property and turn it into houses. This is not 40 acres, twin man. How many homes? What is the value of 40 acres? This home, 264,000, 190,000, 245,000, 2 units here, this corner house, this one sector is not 40 acres. I'll give you the analogy. 1 acre is this football field from this sideline to this sideline that divides the two tribes or our community and our young men of our community going against the young men of the other school's community or the other community. Their family and their households. They sat over here in the visitor slot. We sat over here. We even had more space. Do you know how many people these benches seat? That was us on Friday nights until people started shooting in this parking lot, because that's the community that I'm from. And that's what we needed. We needed intervention. We needed black male leadership. And that is me and still me. Don't question it. I don't like to be challenged, but Morehouse costs too damn much for me to sit around waiting for reparations. I don't wait. We had momentum. We dropped the ball when it matters. and what was covered. That's what I covered on this one. And I'm talking about that federal treasury, that budget that was cut, $4.8 billion, and none of that being Black reparations. What happened? Go ahead, Twin Man. You know, I could get long-winded. Let me keep going real quick, Twin Man, because you said 40 acres. They don't know what this looks like in housing. So if they can't see 40 acres and say, well, damn, that is a lot of 2 and 3 bedroom houses that can be placed on 40 acres. So what is the true value of 40 acres if this football field is 1 acre? I gotta zoom out for them, Twin Man, just so they can know what the fuck they talking about when they talk to me about reparations. I gotta show them the value using Zillow of all of the homes that you were responsible for as a Black man and as a Black community builder. All of the lives that were at stake with the leaders who emerged inside of that community, the jobs that you had to create, and the task that was at hand when it came to creating jobs for all of these people, when it came to upholding and protecting the rights for all of these people. And that's where we're at. $377,000, $219,000, $302,000. Let me do something just for them real quick. Let me do this. Median household income map. I want to overlay just a little bit of data for these motherfuckers, man, because I don't play those motherfucking games. You're not talking to the dumbass dude. You are absolutely listening and rocking with the person who can, man, this is my life here. My children's life and the children's life. I'm going to show you the median income, not across America, but right there in this same neighborhood, current, real time, and not for your imagination. I'm going to show you the value of 40 acres. I think I did a good job of, I didn't even give you the whole number for what 40 acres looks like in terms of 2-bedroom houses, and how many people can benefit from your 40 acres. But because you show the level of incompetence, because you can't grasp what 40 acres looks like from a standpoint of 100 years of cultural and economic development on what 40 acres was. So let me show you what that looks like in my neighborhood. And hopefully from there, you can see how redlining fucked us up, how the denial of that liberty, that right, they had the Homestead Act. 1862, where they deliberately discriminated against people of color inside of those states like Twin Man named, the Alabama, those places where educational spending, where it needs to be more, where it's not doing enough, where they say the schools that are failing, oh, they deserve to fail because the students there are failures. That's what they say about ours. No, motherfucker, this shit is systemic and it's race-based and it's all the way down to the application. If I could show you the difference, maybe you would stop using those talking points. That's what I would say.
Well, we got to think about it like this, Brother Moses. When you have people who are willing to, when you have people who want to sit here and try to challenge you on what you've done, I would tell you to ignore those people, because a person who's going to try to challenge you and ask you what you've done, they're absolutely not doing a goddamn thing about the community and don't give a fuck about the community. So I'm not proving shit to anybody who doesn't give a damn about the community. At the end of the day, they don't want to see the community move forward in a positive direction. They want it to stay exactly where they are because they've carved out their space in it.
That's right.
They've carved out their little piece of heaven, I guess what they would call their version of heaven, and heaven forbid if anybody else can get to come up, because now you don't have somebody to look down on. People who love to sit here and tell other people to show their work, they really just want to sit here and try to shit on you. You don't have to prove a goddamn thing to anybody, Brother Moses.
But you know what you do. It makes for great content. They just food right now for me, man. They allow me to actually go in and elaborate. So as we can look in space,
Brother Moses, let's think about this for a second. Because we're talking about 40 acres. People don't understand how big 1 acre is.
Exactly.
Most houses, I'm gonna be
that's exactly an acre.
Right. Like 1 acre is fucking huge. So take that 1 acre and you could put on 1 acre 4 houses. 4 houses. Decent sized houses. So imagine 40 acres. That's what I'm sitting here saying. If they actually would have given us what we were owed, you think people would be able to talk about Black people the way they do, Brother Moses?
Hell no.
We did We've always done more with less. We've always been on the grind, but we'll have motherfuckers come on YouTube and say black people are lazy and don't work hard, and we're not competing. We've always been on the grind. We've always found a way to make the come up. Look where we came from to where we are now, and you still have motherfuckers in here saying, to this day, we're not competing. We're not doing what we're supposed to do. But the moment you point out the systemic issues that are still prevalent back then and now, you'll be told you're making an excuse. When that black man goes down to the damn bank and try to get a business loan to open up a business where you came from, Brother Moses, I bet he had a tough time, but I bet you had a Chinese restaurant in your neighborhood. I bet you had a Dollar Tree in your neighborhood. I bet you had a dollar store in your neighborhood ran by Koreans. I bet you had a damn one of them hair supply stores out there ran by Koreans. It's easy. They don't want to sit here and look at the obvious. They've always put hurdles in our way, but we've always found a way to get the come up. So what they'll see is, they'll take we've always found a way to make the come up, and they'll harp on that. But they want to look at the fact that why do we have to sit here and work twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times as hard as everybody else just to make the come up? They redlined us into a section. All right, we built towns and we were self-sufficient. So what did they do? They got jealous and destroyed it. And they said, nah, fuck that. Y'all making too much of a come up. So what we gonna do? We gonna make sure we give y'all the shittiest, most rundown areas of every part of every state that we could, and we gonna redline you into that, and we gonna make it hard for you to get out. But see, nobody wants to face those simple realities. This shit has always been a shell game. Show me your budget, I'll show you your priorities. We have never been a priority. So when I hear people talk about how much this country loves us, show me where. When a black man can still be shot in this country for absolutely no reason, I don't give a fuck what he's done, and there's no justice for that man, show me where we're the same. Show me where we've been treated better. When a black woman can sit here pregnant, dragged out of her car in front of her husband, show me where we're treated the same. Show me where's the dignity. When you can have impeccable credentials and you're overqualified for a job and you're overqualified for anything, and you know you're above your peer who might not be black, but yet that person who's beneath you gets the job over you. Show me where we're treated the same. Hell, you might not get the job because your name sounds black. You might not get the house loan because your name sounds black. They ignore shit like that. And that's the shit that irks my nerves. So like I said, Brother Moses, you don't have to prove shit to a motherfucker. Because at the end of the day, you doing more than most of these haters are always doing. Just by putting the message out. But let me get up here and handle these kids, man. Thanks for letting me come up, bro.
Nah, bro, I appreciate you, man. Other than that, that's all I got, man. B1 salute, joined by the twin man and chaos reign here. Excellent information that we had to deliver on this one. This is $4.8 trillion budget proposal. None of that goes to blacks. What happened to the black reparations? Now, you might benefit as an individual household, but what I like to talk about is that collective from the collective. As an individual, who cares what their big budget was? If my budget actually requires some changes to be made in my personal life, I know I'm accountable for me as an individual. So when I'm looking into the media spaces or I'm looking into these big social stories of what's going on, I'm just like every other in group. What's in it for me? And I didn't see much inside of the budget that was directly in it for me. Looked like Brother Preem tried to join for a second. He knows that I really disagree with a lot of the clowning that he likes to do. So I'm glad he jumped right off. Just not the space for that. I don't have the energy to deal with that type of energy too often. Every once in a while, if it's not about the sugar, I mean, if it is about the sugar, then we could rock. But nah, when I'm into my groove, I like to stay into it. So here's another big major point before I let it go. When Twin Man was talking, I was just hovering around some of the median. I was using this median income across the United States map, right? And I'm using this map to demonstrate that surrounding us are other allocations of land and communities en masse that serve groups. Inside of the Sacramento or inside of spaces like that, you will find the highest concentration of African Americans in certain spaces. And inside of those certain spaces, if we're able to zoom down into those spaces, we also have the data for their actual median household incomes. And so we are actually able to compare culturally across different sectors of our city. For Sacramento, I grew up in Del Paso Heights. So for me, I would like to compare the median household income of Sacramentans, North Sacramento, by the race-based data. Let me give you the other map that I use. It would be what is it called? That one drop map, I think it's called something like that. The one dot map, that's what it is. Sorry, too much. Got to be careful of what you allow inside up in here. But the racial dot map, this map here allows me to really zoom in and double verify when I'm looking at a certain area or when I'm doing certain research. So if you want to know what the demographic challenges are like before you decide to, let's say, visit, do a show, do a lecture, or even do business in a certain community or a certain space, this is one of the resources that I go to. It is one of the ones that allow you to zoom all the way in on places like Oakland or California, and then look for your demographic. For this map, I would be looking for the green dot. Back in the day, they used to use maps like this called the redlining map, and they broke them down into colors in certain communities. My community where we were raised was a redlined area, and looking over time at a redlined area and how that impacted the next generations on wealth attainment in those different areas. That's called a study. And to develop it. So I followed that freeway from the Bay Area all the way along. That's that 80 to Sacramento, California. You can take it all the way to the East Coast. But in my part of the world, this is where I live. And this is how the one dot race map breaks down where I'm from. The blue is representative of whites. You'll see where they're highest in concentration and where they are the least locked out. But then you'll also see parts where there is no blue at all, where some of these other colors stand out more, like the green, which represents my household. I am a Black man. My group has to do the studies and develop the information based on our group. We can see everybody else's, but we do the study and develop information on our group. If you could, I wish this would zoom in even more than it is right now, but it is zooming. I am trying to hover this hand over the section that has the most green. That is between these major streets, Marysville Boulevard and Rio Linda Boulevard. Racial dot map. All right. According to census data broken down by race, by community. By race, by community. Doing the study and develop proposals for work. ADOS Sacramento is a chapter. I am not the president, but the work that needs to be done. Then saying, well, what is the median household income of those who fall between Rio Linda and Marysville Boulevard and our green dot, Black household? I don't know what they miss by that. Median household income 30,000, when if I zoom out, I can show you the other communities and it's 70. What more do you need for me to provide? What more do you need for a reparations claim or the impact of redlining by example? Do you need me to zoom in on the banks? But maybe, just maybe, we can only have the conversation. So once again, Marysville Boulevard to Rio Linda. Marysville Boulevard to Rio Linda here was the section that had the most Black households. Somebody put in the chat. Let me drop that in there. My dude said he was in North Highlands. Yeah, we had our share of battles and we fought well, motherfucker. That's my pop reference. But as you see, there are a number of plot developments. They map them out in rectangles because, like the person in the chat said, most homes are on a 16th of an acre. 16 homes is on 1 acre. And you're looking at 40. So your mathematics is 40 times 16 homes is the true potential of your 40 acres and a mule claim. Now, for you, you can expound that up or down. But look at the area where you were raised if you need an example, and then go to Zillow. For Moses, this is Marysville Boulevard. Rio Linda is over here. What is the value of those homes? Now, we know, I just showed you the median household income was $30,000. $30,000. If you want to keep doing the math, break down what $30,000 means in an hourly salary. Let's say that is a working class, because we know that they move the bottom line for working poor or middle class. Let me bring that up. Middle class income. Which income class are you? What is considered the middle class? There's a good one. As a general rule, according to Pew Research, Americans are considered middle class if they make 2/3 to double the U.S. median household income. So you can make 2/3 of it, or you can make up to double. So that is about 45,000. In my community, and where you saw the green dots that represent the Black households inside of my community, the median household income was 30,000. So the question is that less than 2/3 of the median household income? Yes, that entire Black community where you see all of those green dots, that red line section, that community that lost the advantage of those jobs from the military base that was right up the street. And we're not the only ones. So they are below poverty, Black folks. So they got young boys, young girls, there's families there, bigger families too, as I recall. It was at least 3 or 4 in the family. I got 2 other brothers, but and the households were humongous. You'd have your auntie and her kids living there, cousins and shit, in a 2-bedroom little ass house. And so I show you the homes themselves, and I show you the home values, $275,000. If there's anybody who does finance like I do, or banking and finance, then you're able to break down what a $275,000 mortgage is and see if that lines up. See if that 10, 15-year mortgage can be met at $295,000. You could do the math yourself. We needed Black men to stand up and be advocates economically, be advocates politically, not just spiritually like the mega church. And so that pastor had a calling and a duty. My pastor is Reverend Bryant C. Wyatt. He was born and raised in Oakland, California. My tenets are socialism when it comes to the economic governing structures that best empower my life. And they would have to argue against that. But we do got the brother Preem who decided to actually join the panel. I want to make sure that he is not muted. And I do want to acknowledge that he has joined the panel. So let me see if I am able to actually unmute him since he's here. I don't know. Maybe he has himself muted. It's not me. Brother Preem, if you could hear me, thanks for joining this conversation, bro. If it's not you joining, then it's just me ranting. But I like to provide the real information, which is what they see on the screen here. This map is not giving it no justice, though, Brother Preem. See, they talk about it in terms of gangs. The biggest gang was probably the Nogales Crips. And the Nogales Crips was not bigger than the Blood Gang in the entire community. But as a family living inside of a household, it was just a few of these households. The rest of these were just working class family households. Their boys, or that tribe, was not about that gang shit. The Pookie and Ray Ray argument. Us, we were high street. There was another family, Lightning. They owned like most of this. Right here is all of what they own in forms of housing. And the information is public. The wealth that we've acquired is absolutely there. Black millionaires as assets, their families are middle class who do have $1 million worth of assets. It's in their homes. It looks like something like this. 4 houses. It's not near the equivalent of what a reparations claim would actually look like, or what the true restorative justice claim would look like for us here in America. Anyway, Brother Preem, I think I heard you come off mute, so I will acknowledge that and say what's good.
Yeah, I was having audio issues. No, I jumped on because somebody was wailing off a second ago. I don't know if it was you or somebody else about a job and, you know, being more qualified and being passed over and something like that. So, you know, those are the type of ideological spats that I like to go ahead and get into, because I come from a completely different side. Now, the whole thing as far as the neighborhood there in California, I don't know nothing about that. Not from there, you know, so I can't really even speak to that. But
yeah, that was from another comment earlier. I put it on the screen. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I said that was from another comment made by someone earlier. I put it on the screen, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, I just, you know, I'm not a fan of that type of tone. My whole thing is, I mean, if you, and this is one of the problems that I have with another channel on here that I'm not going to mention.
It's all good.
That speaks to technology, is that if someone feels as if they're smarter than the people that, you know, that they're being passed over for, or even smarter than their boss, and I hear that all the time, I'm like, why don't you just
the black brain trust?
Exactly. I'm like, why don't you just fucking quit and start your own shit and compete and put them out of business? It's not hard. Well, it is hard, but
individuals, but in a collective, though, there is no quitting the group. I don't know. Like, you can say I'm leaving and all of that shit, or you can just choose not to do anything. But there is no quitting. I don't know. Death is your release from.
Well,
anyway, go ahead.
I'm talking about the individual who's making a claim that, hey, I'm being passed over. They're putting all these suckers in front of me. These guys are incompetent. My boss doesn't know shit. I'm smarter than everybody. They're leeching off of me, and I'm like, why don't you just fucking leave and quit and start your own shit?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it happens all the time, all day, every day. You know, that's what this country is built on. We live in a capitalist country, thank God, which means you're not entitled to equality of outcome. You're only entitled to equality of opportunity. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Outcome.
Everything else you fight for.
I'm sorry?
Everything else you are expected to fight for.
Yeah, I mean, life is a son of a bitch. And it's just not a son of a bitch for black people. Life is a motherfucker. And I'm just tired of niggas just crying like baby. I mean, life is tough, man. For every fucking body, for most fucking people.
Let me build with you right there real quick. And so here's what I want to actually demonstrate. So even in my own Sacramento, the bigger, broader part, my community itself may have been at risk, but don't think that people with graduate degrees who are smarter than you, they are the ones who got the job because they were smarter than you. It's not in the data. The data says that only about 10% of those folks, just over 10%, even had that professional level degree. The bachelor's degree was only 1 in 5. So it wasn't about your education that you actually attained. That's not what the key differentiator was when it came to who got that job. Why black folks didn't get that job was because of discriminatory hiring practices. The spaces that you would want to go into that actually had a good salary, those are the spaces that did not hire you because you were black. The rest of that shit is for the birds. The reason why you can go right outside of Del Paso Heights and they have jobs that are paying, you know, 70,000 or 55,000 or 60, that makes your household higher than Del Paso Heights, is because of racial preference. It's because of racial implicit bias that is in the minds of those people who are making that hiring decision. I gave the example earlier. As we continue through that 90s, place to try to implement what an affirmative action would look like, it was hijacked by those other groups. Affirmative action then became diversity and inclusion. It started to include the white women and the others, the Mexican, Latino, the Asian, the others, the LGBTQ. And because of that, it wasn't just a racial preference for you and you alone as Black people, to the impact of Black people now not having that advocate sitting at the table. If those Black folks, then, Brother Preem, they didn't have as much access or as much advocacy, as many champions to move up in even those corporate and government spaces or in public, private spaces of ownership. So now you got this, Brother Preem. Now you got a nigga who was not moving up in their job. You know, the military was out and all the businesses that served them. And because of the redlining situation and the income and all of that, your credit score is not going to get you the loan you will need. You ain't got no money. Y'all made $30,000.
Can I just take on one?
I'll build with you. I'll build with you if you give me a sec. You didn't have any money. $30,000 was no money. Median income $45,000 for your entire house. That is a couple's number. And y'all don't got more than $50,000. You just ain't got it. Well, excuse me. If you don't got that, then you're definitely not walking in the bank and saying, I'm going to start my business and that's the way that I'm going to do it. Your ability to compete was not through education. That wasn't the big major criteria. Look on the screen. Graduate degrees was just about 10%, 1 in 5 with a bachelor's. So for your community to experience that level of impoverishment and median income being 30,000, as I showed you on the screen with hard data and facts. Now, if Preem doesn't believe it, I can zoom in on spaces near Preem and we can see if we have work to do, even where Preem. Go ahead, Brother Preem.
Yeah, let me just get on 2 points. Look, education is garbage. Most of my friends who surround me from high school are college graduates. Some of them have doctorates or PhDs or whatever. You know, they of course all have bachelors, and you know their education is garbage. You know, it guaranteed them a job, but when it comes down to competency, when it comes down to ambition, when it comes down to fucking drive, they can't hold a candle up against me. And I'm a high school graduate. So yeah, Black folks, if anything, Black folks, just like everybody else, got pulled into the okie doke that said, hey, if you got this piece of paper, this means something. It doesn't mean jack shit. I don't give a damn if somebody is summa cum laude. If I'm an employer and this person has no drive, they're running out the goddamn door at 5 o'clock, and this other motherfucker that I got over here is fucking hungry. He's dialing the phones well into 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. I'm going to go with the hungry person. If this person just want to rest on the facts that he has a degree that he paid, you know, 80, 90, 100, 150K for, and thinks that that's actually going to go ahead and serve him throughout life, it's not going to happen. Results is the only thing that matters. Diversity is a losing strategy, okay? And corporate America is finally waking up to realize that. You fuck with people based on their merit, okay? Based on the merit, that's it. You want to be judged by the merit and the value that you goddamn bring. Fuck that goddamn diversity shit. Niggas can miss me with that. You know, nobody is entitled to fucking have a certain spectrum of the fucking rainbow in their organization. Business is about winning. And you want winners in there. You just want people in there because the motherfucking so your shit can look like the goddamn United Nations. Am I still here? Oh, okay. Yeah, my audio, man, I was cutting in and out bad as fuck.
It was coming earlier. Yeah, man.
But that's my point of view. That was what I want to get in before the subject matter moved fast. But the whole housing thing, I don't know nothing about that, man. You know, so I mean, it doesn't mean that the point is right, but I don't know nothing about graphs and, you know, housing and how. I mean, I used to be a mortgage broker. I was in banking and finance. I had a mortgage company. You know, I was bonded and all that shit.
How long should it reasonably take to pay off a $150,000 home? And what would your typical mortgage payment look like for that if you wanted to do so in like 10 years?
I mean, if you're going like 10 years now, $150,000 home, I mean, you're probably going to be about, well, it depends on the interest rate. I mean, I'm saying probably about like $800-900. Mm-hmm. You know,
and you hear how he said it depends on the interest rate. What happened to us was that redlined area, they charged higher interest rates for the entire time that my motherfucking grandma was trying to buy that house.
Listen. Look here. Shit happened.
Nah,
Fuck
shit
the.
don't just
Hold
happen.
on, hold on, hold on,
It
hold on.
don't just
I mean,
happen. That
hold
was
on. No, no,
orchestrated.
no,
It was a
no, no, no,
created wealth.
no,
Go ahead.
no, no, no. I was a mortgage broker, and I mean, there are loans out there. I mean, so someone during that same time period as your grandma, who was a veteran that got a VA loan, he wasn't, he had he or she got a great fucking rate at that time, a great interest rate.
Now
Is
that would only
yeah.
be contingent upon if that person
Hmm.
received their loan. So my dad was a veteran as well, and that loan was denied for about 10 to
Okay,
15 years. When he finally was able to refinance, it was only
okay.
after the race-based pressure that was
Well,
applied
well,
even in the
but
military.
but
Go
hold on.
ahead.
But what does that one story have to do with the thousands, tens of thousands of stories, or hundreds of thousands of stories of blacks who got approved for the goddamn loan? Your
Yeah,
one story
yeah,
proves
sure.
your one story proves nothing.
What do you mean it doesn't prove anything?
It doesn't prove anything. It doesn't prove a fact. It proves that that's your one story. It's the exception. It's not the rule.
Why do you keep calling it one story? Do you anyway, good job, Preem. Thanks for coming up and blessing us with your panel. I knew you was at some point going to go into that fuckery, but I don't have the energy to deal with it. So go ahead, brother. Anyway, if it's one story, then it's one story. I know that it's not. And so him to put that in the air as if it's only one story, he would have to do the research himself to prove himself wrong, but it's idiotic to state at the best. Businesses and jobs. That's what I was cracking down on. So in my community, somebody asked me the question, well, what about what have you done? And so I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper and show why the need was so strong. I've shown a couple of key leading examples of the median household income. I showed you that by the the one dot map. I showed you the green section was actually where green represents blacks, and the entire community where the most green dots, most green households were. That's where I'm talking. I zoomed all the way in and showed you all of those households change over and go to the median income for those folks in that section, and showed you that that was small. And on a previous stream, I could probably do it again. I could show you the same redlining maps. It's not just a phenomena of one. It is entire communities that experience this. Now, for the black groups, when they say the reparations HR 40, they are talking about it. Let me do that. Let me stop just saying it and actually show my work. HR 40, the bill. And all I need is the title, because I already know what I'm talking about. I don't have to go to it and keep giving you the information over and over again. Like I have the burden of proof that that was only a case of one. Miss me, Preem. HR 40 is the commission to study and develop. So if you have National Association of Black Accountants, people who are moving into spaces like the Government Accountability Board, they're graduating from the Morehouse colleges with their degree in accounting, or their degree from in accounting or finance from Howard University, and they're moving into corporations or companies, whether private and it's like Deloitte, or it's private and it's something like Ernst & Young. It's private and they're going into those spaces, Chase, JP Morgan Chase, the banks, they're moving into those roles in the private sector, but they're also moving into spaces in the public sector. They're moving into government jobs, places like the comptroller's office or the government accountability office. And once they get there, they have the ability to influence and have an impact on a collective scale rather than just as an individual. What are the positions that they push in order to enable greater benefits for their group? Well, as a bank, we know that they have profit that they're pushing for and reasonable expectations on returns of investment. Redlining, if that is still spaces where their bank has been denying proper home loans or jacking up the interest rate on those home loans for people inside of those communities, then that is the responsibility of the African Americans who work in those companies to be our biggest allies and advocates, not for them to focus on LGBTQ communities, not to focus on the condition of the white community, not even just to leave it at their own individual. I got that, but that's table stakes. Once you get there, you are expected to be able to do your job. But what is the next level of contribution or impact that you can have? Well, that's us. Politically, if I'm somebody that speaks on politics, I tell you this was the one bill that I think, when I gave the storyline earlier, Black reparations, Here's the bill: commission to study and develop reparations proposals. Brother Moses, ADOS Sacramento, reparations proposal. Show you the information about redlining. Zoom in using all of your sources and data on the community. Show you everything but the loans that were given, and not like Brother Preem. Don't say shit happens, say restorative justice. Those were the claims, or the reparations proposal. We would propose the reparations claim for that monies. What is the difference between the interest rates that was given to my grandmother? Not a story of one. I showed you the numbers of people, of households that were represented there. Now, I can't even begin to get people like Brother Preem on the level of having the conversation from 40 acres. That is too much for you to expect of Brother Moses, is to be able to bring the plane down from 40,000 feet, one that can view on a global scale, and have the conversation with Preem about it's more than one person, Brother Preem. The entire conversation is more than just my grandmother. She is a segment, an analogy. She is a microcosm of the bigger picture that is media and the story about $4.8 trillion, but not our 200 billion. Because it's people like Brother Preem who would say, well, it's not necessary to have $200 trillion allocated to the Black community. But it's Democrats in New York who say that these higher discretionary spending levels.
Is that what he said?
Give me a second. These higher discretionary spending levels made it possible for Congress to responsibly fund the federal government and provide greater investments in the needs and priorities of American families and communities. Lowy, Brother Moses does an entire presentation making a case for my own neighborhood as an individual, one that I don't live in, and I'm not low income anymore. But as a Morehouse graduate and someone from that, I still have a responsibility to that community that I can't escape. So I make an entire case where the federal government can provide greater investment in the needs and priorities of American families and communities like mine's. And he says, well, Moses, that's just a one-off case. I show you the politicians therein. I show you the community, the home values, and everything therein. The streets and the initiatives, the roads, the $200,000 for this, $200,000 for that. I don't know what else I can show to make it relevant. Do I have to use LexisNexis to show you that, yeah, we still struggle with some crime in our area that we could use an additional funding mechanism for as we continue to revitalize the culture in our community? See, if I talk to white people like that, they get it. There's still high levels of crime in some sections of my community that deserve to have an appropriation of funds. Why? Because here are the programs that we're doing. It's the revitalization of culture. We have that farmers market on Saturdays right there on Grand Avenue, but we need a budget to be able to market it. We have goods being produced at our high school from a business model started by one of our most favorite and esteemed pillars of our community. Yes, it is still there to this day. And I can continue to show you that that is still a viable business model. The Greater Sacramento Urban League is still trying to find good jobs for the residents of my community. That building, that facilities is still there. The small bank that was affixed to it, American River Bank, that no longer services customers. We just could not get enough deposits. Why? Because the depreciation that we experienced. Anyway, my name is Brother Moses, and I just like to bring you the information that I think is valuable. I gave you some stories from the Black Wall Street Times. I gave you information from the United States or USA Today, their view on it from a Social Security lens. I'm not going to benefit from Social Security for another 30 years. Whose responsibility is it to fight for the millennial? Well, shit, I'm the old millennial. I guess that's us. If unaware, LexisNexis equals a scholarly database. They are a data repository of crime and other things. And here's how it's relevant. If you are looking to get a loan, one of the sources of data or aggregates of data is LexisNexis. It actually is. They provide the data to a lot of institutions, including finance. Our industries run off of data. And so this presentation, hopefully I gave enough data to at least make my point. They don't gotta say yes. This does not have to be shared with you. Maybe at some point, Brother Preem would want to create his own message. But for Brother Moses, I just don't want to go down Preem's conversation because I have work to do, right? Entire presentation. Let's do it one more time and recap. My coworker wanted to tell me, a Morehouse graduate, about a story she found. Morehouse College polo team certified by U.S. Polo Association. Clap your hands. That is a phenomenal thing. 141,000 shares. But what wasn't shared was this idea that, or this article from, who was it? The Black Wall Street Times. And it talked about Trump's or the executive office's 2020 federal budget proposal of $4.8 trillion. That thing had 66 shares. So they were talking more about Morehouse and the men who can ride horses, which I tell you, they come from very, very wealthy families. Those brothers right there, they are pretty good. And those are the triggering thoughts that move me to want to provide a more richer quality content. But during that, I was challenged. Hey, what have you done? Why are you speaking as an individual? People who don't, what was the actual thing that triggered me in the chat? So after I gave a phenomenal presentation, gave that information, I broke it down according to what they said. I used my professional tone and all of that. Then I started to go to the chat, opened it up for conversation, and somebody put, what is this one? Oh, now this is somebody who knows about my area. Correct. All the homes that are in the line along that American River, all of the big houses in the Arden area, all of that property in Sunrise, all of those big houses in Rancho Cordova also. So somebody who knows that area, they can tell you how it just grows and grows and grows. Our area was the one that was depressed and depressed and depressed. And our ability to have upward mobility outside of that depression was inhibited or prohibited by those other groups and their policies that they were getting on the books. They were getting their agendas written in. They absolutely were. And ours, you got to ask the question. We have great momentum, but who dropped the ball? And when you say who, that's specific. When you do the research for your own area, if this is something that moves you to take an action and you do some research in your own area, you absolutely want to know the who. And that's what I shared in this presentation about one of the great leaders in my area, just so happens to have that mega church right there on that Marysville Boulevard. Go to the Black Panther, encourage that socialist area that says, look, if we got, then that's all we need. What can we do to better support each other in our community? Do we have Black deacons who are able to provide jobs for some of these folks? What can we do about Sister Johnson, them's son? He was one of those guys. Created the different housing apartment complexes for those getting out of prison, created spaces and programs for Black people who had drug addiction. We have a small clinic right there now. Crime got so high, we had a small police station built in right there. The medians put in to help regulate speed because the high speed chases, you could get away if you just made it to that freeway. Get to that freeway and you go, and then get off that freeway and you go, and you can make all motherfucking rights. Fuck a left. I'm making all rights. You could get all the way to the Bay Area before they found your car again, if that's how much danger your life was in. And believe you me, coming from where I'm from, that is a very realistic analogy. But not just the pastor, the actual council member of District 2, which represents Del Paso Heights. Some of the initiatives I scrolled through on the screen didn't talk about them all, but I also gave my track resume of some of the ones that I actually got my fingers and my toes in, where I was instrumental in this shit. So don't challenge me because I really don't like to toot my own horn, essentially when I know that there are bigger challenges to discuss. This small football field, from this side, which is the home side, to this side, which is the visitor side, but only between the players And then from, I think it's like maybe the touchdown, or maybe it is even from the 10-yard line to the 10-yard line. That square distance between the players, that part of the field from 10 to 10, that is 1 acre. And homes are built, as you see, on a 16th of the acre. You can drop a lot of these homes in this one football field, and that's how you get 1 acre. Now multiply that by 40, and you will understand how afraid these niggas are when it comes to having conversations about reparations. They don't want to have the conversations about reparations. And so I sure realize it to say $200 billion this year. And that's just even in concordance with what that damn white woman was saying. She was the one saying 200 billion. I know it's a lot more. I know the impact of 4 million, and let's even shrink that just for these motherfuckers and say 4 million times 40 acres. I know to shrink that and say 400,000. Or let's just look at the soldiers who actually fought in the war, the Harriet Tubmans during the civil rights in 1862, when we were actually told about that Sherman Reservation in the 40 acres. And that's the whole premise of the reparations argument, is 40 acres of land. And while he may not know about housing, that is not my concern, Brother Preem, is to focus on educating you on the value of 40 acres. But to show you that that is the inheritance denied you through racial policy, and to connect that with a $4.8 trillion budget today that does not include Black reparations, and what your stake would actually be if Brother Preem was someone with 40 acres worth of housing developments as his assets. No, it's about your individual effort and achievement. It's about your ability to execute on your goals and your priorities. Yes, and it is about collective political and economic endeavors. B1, Brother Moses, B1 salute. That's all I got, and I'm out.